Hey everyone, it's Nate here, and welcome to this video, which I'm very excited to share with you because this is kind of a watershed slash huge milestone for me. This is one of those songs that I told myself when I was growing up, oh, that's too hard for you to play. You'll never be able to play that. And this past year, I started to focus on fingerstyle a lot more, and I thought to myself, if I can play Windy and Warm, Doc Watson's version of it, that will just be like a pinnacle for me as far as playing. And this just proves that if you set a goal and work towards it throughout, 3 months, 6 months, a year, that you can reach it. So I'm excited to share it with you. It's pretty complicated for teaching, so bear with me. This is going to be a really long video, but I wanted to go note by note just to make sure that you have all the resources you need to learn this song. If this is one of your goals, I have the tab for you and the notation as well. And if you need help learning the basics before getting into this song, go to guitarfam.com, create your complimentary account. There are loads of free courses you can go through there, and there's some premium courses too, like the Chord Masterclass that'll help you get this kind of stuff down. And if you need help with anything specific, you can always schedule a personal private one-on-one lesson with me. The first one is complimentary, so there's no risk or obligation. So let's get into this very thick, complicated, tougher, second toughest fingerstyle song I've ever played, but very rewarding and awesome sounding song. That I like the Doc Watson version of it. You may like the Chet Atkins version of it or somebody else's, but the Doc Watson version was what I was shooting for in this performance. By the way, if you want to skip to the performance or hear the whole song played all the way through, just skip to the end of the video. I'll put it there for you. I'll also put up just a performance video of this one, so it's really easy to kind of grab and just watch through. All right, let's get into this. I capo the 3rd fret. Just because that's the way Doc Watson did it. You can play this in any key, in any position, doesn't really matter. All the shapes will stay the same relative to where you start. And it starts off like this with an A minor, and you have to reach out with your pinky if you want to keep your A minor in place. I like to do that just to get set up for what's coming. But you play the open E, and then the 3rd fret of the E with your pinky with a hammer on. And that's kind of the pickup into the first little vamp to kind of set the stage for what's going to happen. After that, all it is alternating bass with your thumb on the A, and then I like to do the D and G strings, and then the E and the D and G strings again. And you're going to do that for 2 or 4 measures, whatever you want, just to kind of set the tone. I do for 2, and I'm muting everything pretty hard here just to get that muted there. And if you're new to Travis picking, this is where you need to live for a long time until your thumb is just automatic. That's a whole other story though. If you're looking to play this song, you probably already got that down. If not, just use this as an opportunity to kind of sharpen that skill and slow it down as much as you need to. Make sure you get a good, nice thumpy mute on there. And do that for 2 or 4 measures to start things out with. Then comes the connector, what I call the connector phrase for the song. This is what you play at the beginning, the intro twice, and then in between each other part of the song, and at the end twice as well. So it's just on an A minor for the most part. And the bass notes are the low E, the D, and the A, and then the D and G. And I kind of hit and miss. I'm not really too particular about that, as far as hitting the D and G at the same time. Sometimes, for the way it works out, as you'll see, you do have to do it D and G at the same time. Other times it doesn't matter as much, but it's just a kind of a stylistic thing. So the first really 3 measures, that's your thumb. Sorry, after that, the first for the connector is just, and all muted. And then you have your A minor shape, and you put the melody on top with that, and it's just, so index on the G string, middle finger B string, pinky up to the 3rd fret of the B string there, and then back to the 1st fret of that B string, and then your thumb, when it gets the D and G, takes care of that kind of other melody note there. But all the bass notes are muted, and all the melody notes are not. So. And take this 1 measure at a time. The more you just take 1 measure at a time, like ultra slow, the faster you will learn it, even though it may not seem like that at the time. Next measure, kind of the same vibe. The only thing that changes on top is the melody, and you have pinky back down on the 3rd fret of the B string, and you bend that up. And this is tough because you have to hold everything still, but only bend that note on your pinky. You don't really have to because you're only playing the low E string. And the rest of that is so bend, let it back down, just the 3rd fret normally, and then 1st fret of that B string, and then the G string on the 2nd fret that's already being fretted. And then your thumb just alternates as it normally would. And at the end of that measure, you have kind of a pickup, you have the open G string, and then you hammer on for the 1st beat of the next measure to the 2nd fret. So you're just lifting up that A minor. And that's the 1st beat of the next measure. Bass notes stay the same here. 2nd beat is just the 1st fret of the B. 3rd beat, 2 8th notes. 3rd fret and 1st fret of the B. And then your bass note just keeps continuing like that. So, and I do get the D and G together. They're all at once. And here is a little lick. This is where it deviates. Your bass line stops. You just hit the low E once, muted, and you slide it from the 3rd fret to the 5th fret on the B string. And then grab the 3rd fret of the high E string with your 1st finger. Go back to that 5th fret of the B string. Slide back down to the 3rd fret. 1st fret of the B. 2nd fret of the G, then the open G string. So slowly, super slow. And really slow on that one. And I like to just grab my thumb pick and pinch it like I'm using a flat pick. That really helps. And this is a slick pick in case you're wondering. I think Fred Kelly makes it, and it's just so easy to do flat picking stuff with it. Anyway, that's just a little side note. So let me play that 1st phrase for you of the connector. So the 2nd phrase of the little connector starts off the exact same way. The first 2 measures almost are the exact same. From there you move directly to an F major chord, and the bass notes here are just the low E and the D string, and then you move to a G chord and play the same notes too, so the low E and the D. So the bass notes for both of those chords, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the melody notes on top will be the G string and the B string, and it's a little syncopated there, so watch out for that. And then the open B string and the G string. And it's really syncopated there throughout the entire thing, really. So F. And I'll play it a little faster for you so you can hear it in context. And then you move to like the last, what will be the last part of, last measure of the little connector phrase. And it just goes back to an A minor, and you have A string, D string, E string, D string, back to kind of your primary bass riff that you had at the very beginning. And the melody notes there are just the G string, and that's really it until you get to the and of 4, and you have the pickup on the open G string to repeat the connector phrase again. So, and that's on the and of 4, and that takes you back around to the beginning of the connector. Back to the top. And here's where it changes. This is the second ending. So the second time through you play this, you have the bass notes will be just E, D, and then A, and 2 Ds. So quarter, 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 2 8s. And this is, I should have mentioned this a long time ago, but everything is swung in this song. All the eighth notes are swung. So instead of playing da 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 da, you're gonna play da 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 da. So swung eighth notes instead of. So be careful of that. Anyway, when you get to the ending for the second time, you go to that F, G, and then to the A. And those 2 8th notes on the D string are a pickup into what would be considered the B section of the song. We'll get into that. So the B section of the song kind of discontinues the constant bass line and moves to a quite different sounding part. It starts off on an A minor, and we're really only using these 2 notes out of the A minor chord, the B and G strings. And I have these 2 notes for the last measure of the little connector section, and then I play the G and B strings with my first and second fingers. And then I hit an open A. Then I move the shape up to the 3rd and 4th frets there. And then I move up, change my finger to the 5th fret of both the G and B strings. So, and then back down to the 3rd and 4th fret, then back down to the 1st and 2nd fret, and then open on the G and B strings, and then the 2nd fret of the D and G strings. And that's the kind of the main little phrase. And there's really not a whole lot going on. Like I have this A shape that I'm just kind of moving up. And I make it major there. And then put it back. So walk it up, walk it down, then put it back. And then you kind of do it again. Only you rest, play a dotted half note when you get back to the 1st and 2nd fret with these fingers. And then do it again. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky. I play this probably a little bit differently than Doc Watson just because I kind of adapted it for my own style. I'll play it and then I'll let you know what's going on. It's kind of a sweep picking with your index finger there. So D string, G string with my thumb. Then I sweep down the high E, B, and G strings with my index finger. And then I reach up to the B string with my thumb, high E string with my index finger, and then the thumb grabs the G string. So that's kind of a common little technique in this song that I had to really break down to get decent sound. And it's really fast. So really work on the note separation at first. Because once you get it up to speed, you're going to need that slow practice that you put in with that. Anyway, after that, you have a low E, and you're going to play an E7 chord here. And then the whole chord. Then you have a little riff, a little lead line, kind of. So low E, whole chord, 1st fret of the high E string, open high E string, 3rd fret of the B, 1st fret of the B, open B. And again, I just pinch my thumb pick there and swing the notes to play that. And that wraps up what would be the B section, so I'm going to play that slowly for you. There's the 2 pickup notes. And that's it. And then you go back to the intro section or the connector section, and you only play once. You don't do the second ending, you just play it through once. So it'd be 8 measures, then back to the... For this connection going in to the C section, you just have an A minor, and you play the A string and the G string, thumb and index finger, B string, back to the G string. Then you move to an E major chord, quarter note, low E string, and then 2 8th notes with your thumb and index finger on the D and G strings. So And that gets us into one of the hairier sections of the song. That's the C section. And it moves to a G chord here, and the bass notes here are just the low E and the D string, at least for the next 2 measures. So when you have this G chord, those are your notes for the bass. And you have the G string, open G string on top for your melody first, and then the high E string that's already being fretted. So, and then the high E string again. And those are the only 3 melody notes in that first measure. I'll do it again. Da, da. And then this is weird because you have to switch from that, what would be that open G, to a G major bar chord, this one. And the pattern here stays the same as far as the bass notes, low E and D. And the melody notes here are high E string. And here is where it gets a little difficult. You have to pinch the G and B strings on the next 8th note, and then grab this other melody on top with the high E string, and then finish your bass note. So that's a little tricky. And the next measure is a lot like that, as far as having to kind of double up on notes with your thumb. The next measure moves to a C9 chord, the shape right here. And it gets really tricky because you have to pull double D with your thumb here again. The bass line goes. So A, D, G, E, D, E. And the melody on top of that is, first you have, on that second 8th note, you have index finger on the B string, and then middle finger for the next 8th note on the high E string. So that's really tricky. And then the G string, and when I'm playing that G, I use that time to get my 3rd finger over to the low E, and then I play both the 3rd fret of the low E and the B strings together, and then my middle finger grabs the high E string. Then thumb goes to the D string, and then really quickly comes back to the low E. So that's kind of really tough to explain, but here, check out as far as my picking hand goes. And this end is just kind of bouncing back and forth between the A and the E strings. So you can see why this is really important to slow this down ultra slow when you're first learning it. From here, you have kind of the next measure, you keep the C9 on, but you have to put your pinky up on the 5th fret and keep that in place. That's nasty. And you have kind of that same sweeping effect for a triplet there on the top 3 strings. And I just kind of strum down for that next one, and then up, and then let off with my pinky, and then just strum the C9 chord. So, and it's kind of hard to know what that sounds like in context, so I'll speed it up for you a little bit. Kind of jazzy, and I'm really only playing the top 3 strings there. So that measure before. The next 2 measures go to an F major chord, just this bar chord. And we kind of modify things a little bit here and there, but you'll see. It kind of goes with that kind of same idea. You hit the low E string, and then the D and G strings with your thumb. And I do the same kind of thing. I sweep it down, then down, up, then a low E string again to finish it off. And then you have to put your pinky down to make this into kind of an F9 chord. And you do the same sweeping thing. And I do kind of the same thing here. This is a little bit different from what Doc Watson does. I do the same kind of sweeping, down, up, and then let my pinky off, and then up again. So that the 2 measures of F for you. And up to speed a little bit. So that's a tricky one to get down. This is probably 4 of the toughest measures in the whole song, so take this one really slow. And from there you go to a D minor 7, actually D minor 7. And the way I play this is just, it's kind of the same idea again here. I play thumb on the D and G strings, then sweep down, and then a down up with my index finger. So slowly. And from there you have like another little lead line. You go to an E minor, play low E, a whole E minor chord, and kind of that same little lead line riff. So first fret, open, third fret of the B, first fret of the B, and then the open B. So let me play that whole C section for you as best as I can. This one's super tricky, so here you go. And then it goes back into the intro section or the connector section and just start playing that again. So and right here, when you go back into this A minor, it changes a little bit to get into the next section. And what you do is hit that melody note on top, and the rest of the measure is just your bass line in preparation for what would be, they call this the B variation. I will call this the D section. And this one has a big shift to, you have to go all the way up here to what would be, like if you didn't have a capo on, to be the 5th fret, and play a partial, what would be kind of an A minor chord using the E minor shape, but I just use the top 4 strings because you need your open E and your open A strings, and that's, the bass line starts off on your A, and it goes to your G, then your open E, and then your G. So, and the melody line is high E string, 5th fret that you're already fretting, 7th fret, 8th fret, 7th fret. So that one's kind of nasty to play at first. You have to really work on your aim. And then the next measure after that, it changes a little bit as far as the bass notes. You have A string, D string, E string, D string. So it goes from to, and then the melody for the second measure is just 5th fret of the high E string that you're already playing, then pinky on the 8th fret of the B string, and then B string, 5th fret that you already have fretted. And at the end of that measure goes back to the 5th fret of the high E string. So it's a little bit weird. So I'm going to play those 2 measures for you all together. And this one was probably the toughest as far as where, getting to be really accurate with where your thumb goes. Let's go ahead and go on to the next couple measures of what I would consider the D section. Let's go on to the next couple measures of this section. You keep your A minor chord shape in place, and your bass line moves to the open A, 7th fret of the D, E, and then to the G. So it's a little bit different here. Constantly changing in this section. So, and then the melody note on top is the 7th fret fretted on the 2nd beat, then the 8th fret on the next beat, beat 3, and then back to the 7th fret on beat 4. So kind of dissonant, but really cool. This is kind of a creepy part, or kind of a sneaky creepy part. The next measure keeps the same chord shape in place, and the bass notes are A, D, E, G. So the same. We got lucky for once. It keeps the bass notes same as the last measure, and the melody notes on top are just 5th fret, 8th fret of the B string. Those are 2 8th notes. Then on the and of 2, you have back to your 5th fret of the high E string, and of 3, 5th fret of the B string, and then the and of 4, 5th fret of the high E string. So there's not a ton going on in the melody as far as, moving your finger around on this one. So you have do that again. So those 2 notes. I'll play this whole section for you up to this point. The next measure of this section is the exact same as the first measure of this section, so that's nice. and then you move the next measure, your bass line goes A, D, E, D, and your melody line is just 5th fret of the high E, 8th fret of the B, and then back to the 5th fret of the high E. So, and then right after you hit that last bass line, you have to move down here to hit the 2nd fret of the G string, because we're moving to like a D minor 7 chord. And then from there, we're already on the D minor 7, so you sweep down, and then down up for your strumming there. And then you move to an E major chord for the on beat 4 of that measure. And then hit the low E, 2nd fret of the D string, and then the next measure, sweep down 3 notes, triplet, and then strum down with your index finger for 1/4 note. And then you move to an E minor chord, play a low E string, and then thumb on the D string, index finger on the G. So that whole D minor phrase to the E major and then the E minor will be. And then you get back into your so that gets us into what would be the E section. And the bass line, it's a kind of inconsistent here, but it sticks mostly to the A and D strings. So the bass line for the first measure is A, D, E, D. And then for the next 2 measures, it's just A, D, A, D, A, D, A, D. So we'll look at those first 3 measures. So you're sliding into that 2nd fret and hitting your thumb on the 1. Then you have to put down this rest of this shape and play the D string with your thumb, and the high B and E strings with your 2nd, 1st fingers. And all this is an A with a G shape, right? We're just playing a partial part of it. So then the low E, 2nd fret of the B string that's already being fretted, and then thumb. So, and that's the next measure. Keep this planted, this A, thumb on the A, D, and the melody is just, so 3, 2 on the high E, 5, 2 on the B. So 3, 2 on the high E, 5, 2 on the B. So with the thumb. So from there, slide your A back down to the 1st fret and kind of do the same thing. Hit the high E and the B string there on the and of 4, and then slide back up to your A shape. And then your thumb will be A, D, A, D. And your melody note on top will be 5, and then 5 again. And you have kind of the same melody thing going on here. So 3, 2, 5, 2, and then your thumb goes back to the a little bit different here. E, D, A, D. So. Okay, and then the next measure, you go back down, same idea, and the thumb goes back to the just A, D, and the melody is just 5 and 5 on the and of 1, and then on 2. And this is probably one of the trickiest measures for me. It's just the melody notes on top are just, so 3, 2, 5, 2, 5, 2, and that's just on the high E and B strings. But you have to keep your thumb going on that too, all while keeping that A in place. So feels a little bit weird on your index and middle finger. From there you have an E7, but I like to use this fingering for it just because it sets me up well for the next chord. I'm just leaving this note out, and I'm using this 7th instead of lowering this one. So you have the bass note will be, the bass line will be E, D, E, G, and the melody line on top is on 2. You have the open high E, Now the and of 2, you have the 3rd fret that you're fretting right here on the B string, and then on the and of 3, you have the open E again. So one more time. And then from there you need E7 flat 9, which you just put your pinky down. So that's why I like being set up for this. And I play all the top 4 strings with these 4 fingers. Thumb on the low E, all the fingers again, 2 thumbs, then 1 more thumb, and it's so it's a little bit weird, it's a little bit fast. So let me play that whole part of the E section for you up till this point. And then here is where we go into the last bit of the song, or the last part of this section. You have to, on the and of 4, you have to go back with your middle finger on the 1st fret of the B string and use that as kind of a lead in to slide up to an A7. And this is a little bit tricky, so what you have to do is as soon as you slide up to the 2nd fret, hit the open A string with your thumb, and then the D and open high E strings with your thumb and middle finger, and then the 2nd fret that you're already fretting with your index finger, open G string, 3rd finger down on the high E with your middle finger, then open with your index finger, then the D string with your thumb, then pinky, high E string, middle finger. And the fingerings here are just suggestions, so do whatever you like. One more time, a little faster. From there you move to an A chord in the bass line. It's just E, D, E, A. And the melody line is just the 2nd fret of the G string on the and of 1 and the and of 2. Then you take your A off and just hit that last A note and the open G for the last melody note for that measure. The next measure is pretty tricky. It'd be like a D7 or a D9 over F sharp. I'll just play it for you and then break it apart from there. You do change fingering, so the chord changes part of the way through, but you just go low E string that you're playing with your thumb, then D and G strings with your thumb and 1st finger, then G and B strings with your thumb and 1st finger, and then you can do that with your index finger, or you can do it with your 2nd finger. This is what makes it a little tricky. So pinch there, and then pinch with your thumb in the middle if you want to. Or you can do like Doc Watson does, like that, with just the 1st finger. I find that the middle finger there on the 2nd pinch helps. Then you have just the G string with your index finger. Then you let off with your 1st finger, pinch the low E and B strings with your thumb and middle finger. Then index finger on the G string, D string with your thumb, high E string with your middle finger. So next measure keeps that kind of D7 shape on. You start off with your low E string, with that F sharp with your thumb, and then you pinch the D string and the B string that you're already fretting there. Then let off with your index finger to that open string and the low E with your thumb. So, and then index finger grabs the G string, and then you have D with your thumb and then G with your index finger. So one more time for you. And then you go, from there you go just to an A power chord. And you can palm mute that. I like to palm mute it to make it a little sneaky. And then you have a little riff to end it out. 2nd fret of the A string, 4th fret of the A string, open D. And you have kind of a hint of an E chord there. Kind of a double stop on the 2nd fret of the D and the 1st fret of the G. So, and then to end things out, just open E, 2nd fret of the E, 4th fretted E, and then you go back into it. So let me play that last section for you all the way through. So that's really the entire song. After you finish that last section, all you have to do is play the little connector part twice, again, all the way through. And when I end it, I go from this F, and then I play it again, I restate it. I play like an F minor 6 at the end to cap it off. And I keep it really simple on the last time, so just F note, 1st and 2nd finger, G note on the bass, 2nd, 1st finger, and then A minor, and end it like that. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching. I know this is a more complicated song, and if I have any 2 tips that will help you out, the things that I learned most from this song are slow things way down. Slow down to the point where you're not making any mistakes if possible. That will help you learn it so much faster than it will if you just kind of cruise through and keep making mistakes. Trust me, you may not feel like it, but you will learn this. Instead of taking you 6 months, it may take you 3 months to learn this. The second thing that I would say as far as a big tip is just work on one little tiny section at a time. Don't try to tackle the whole thing all at once. That'll make it a lot easier to digest. And listen to whichever version of the song you're going for as much as possible. That way you can hear it in your head as you're playing it. That'll help you learn it faster too. Again, if you need any help with the basics, go to guitarfam.com, create your complimentary account. You can even schedule a personal private one-on-one lesson with me. The first one is complimentary, so there's no risk or obligation. Also, let me know in the comments below what songs do you want to learn. That's what mode I am in for the first quarter of this year of 2021 is just cover song mode. So I'm putting out as many as possible. I'd love to hear what you want to learn. See you on the site. Bye.